Okay, Internet, I thought I might explain how lights and dazzles work inside of Universe of War. Took me a little bit to figure it out, but I did it. And now I can explain how all of it works because it is not something that is used in Empire at War. That is one of the few benefits of the upgraded Alamo engine for Universe at War, or at least one of them, is that you can actually have lights inside of your environment. You can have dazzles, you can have projections and meshes. You can basically give the illusion of lights being projected off of a thing. But you might be asking, well, how exactly do lights work? Well, it is kind of a multi step process, but I will go over it. So, for starters, you have dazzles, okay? And dazzles are basically these little light objects. Let me just pull up a demo. It's kind of like a little ball. You see this? This is a dazzle. Um, this flashing light back here, that's also a dazzle. This is a dazzle as well. And that's pretty much what that is. It's a little ball of light, and you can put it somewhere, and that's what that does. So how do you create a dazzle? Basically, what you would do is you head over to your create tab, and you're going to go over to helpers, and you'll see Alamo Dazzle down here at the bottom. You can click anywhere, and it just creates one. And the way you control these things is you head over to the modify tab, and you'll have this whole Alamo Dazzle list thing right here. The frequency, from what I recall, controls how often it flashes. The color controls the color of the light. And you have the radius, which if you change this, then the dazzle gets bigger. This is kind of a projection of how large the ball will project around stuff. But basically, you have that, and whenever it picks what type of object it uses, it pulls it from a texture. It pulls it from the lens flare texture, which I guess I can pull that up really quick. Well, maybe not real quick, but yeah, lens flare texture. This is where it gets the different not proxies, dazzles. And what it's doing right here is it's using UV slots, kind of similarly to how we talked about decals and how you can put decals on sort of a sheet and it uses these coordinates to find it. Basically, it's using slot 0, and the number of slots is 2. So if you take a look at that picture, that means that 0, is this coordinate, and then it's stretching over across 2, which means this is the light that it's going to spawn. And for other stuff like this one, if you wanted this coordinate over here, it'd be like x0, y2, and then number slot 2. But that's pretty much how that works. And then like the phase and the bias, those are other controls, not completely sure what they do. I think phase has to do with how quickly it fades in and out, and maybe the bias has to do with how strong the light is, but I could be wrong about that. But anywho, those are the settings for creating those, and basically it allows you to create a small little ball of light. But there's more than just that ball of light. For some objects, you have like a projection. And take, for example, right here. Okay, this is a vehicle and it has these lights coming from it. So these little dots right here are dazzles that are glowing. But then this right here is some sort of object that is glowing. And it took me forever to figure out exactly what this is, but this is actually a model. Okay? And if you take a look in Blender here, you can see that this thing is actually like a model, a very flat model, that is basically UV unwrapped to take over like a specific section of a texture. And this is actually used for the projection of many different lights or objects in the game. So it's using this texture, and the UV map on the object that is created is basically choosing one of these things to overlay. And you can tell that there are multiple layers on this projection, kind of giving it a 3D volume. But here's the problem. Anytime I would import an object, an Alamo object into 3ds Max, this projection would simply not work. So like if we take a look at this vehicle right here, I imported it and it just simply isn't working. And what I figured out was that it's actually this mesh alpha V colorized thing that's causing it to fail. And I don't know what it is with this program, with the importer, but it's just simply using the wrong. It's using the wrong type of texture. So what you need to do is you need to go here. You don't need to click DirectX shader like what Black Ant tells you to do, because like if you pull this up, it only shows a limited amount of the different shaders and the different options that you can use. So basically, you're gonna click on this and make sure that you're in shaders, Project Invasion, Art shaders, whatever. You're right here. And what you want is mesh additive. It's using mesh additive V color for some reason, but you don't want this because it just doesn't work. You want mesh additive instead. And if you open that instead, well, actually, no, sorry. This is the really no, actually, yes, this is the correct version. But mesh additive will actually make it show up, and you can see it inside of 3ds Max, and you can actually control the color distortion, so you can make it more faded. Day and night effect, that will basically make it to where this thing will show up more or less in day or night. So if you set this to a 1, it's very much affected by the daylight cycle. If it's set to 0, then it's not going to be, and the light is just going to project no matter what you do. But yes, you can also control the color up here. So for example, I could choose this to be like a nice warm yellow color instead. You make it whatever you want it to be. But this basically makes it to where you are able to create an object that projects what appears to be light in front of the vehicle, like a very faded, tinted object that just sits in front of it. And this object's alpha layer, its ability to show up will depend on the day and night cycle, depending on if you adjust that. Furthermore, with the Dazzles, you can affect day and night here as well. So for example, these lights on the front of the vehicle, you can see that this has night only checked on it, which means that if it's nighttime in the game, then the dazzle will be there, but if it's not nighttime, then it won't be there. So that's that. And again, you can tell that this does project inside of here. But as I've stated before, whenever you'd export it, it just looked like this. And that was all because whenever you use the importer, it was using the wrong effect. So that's how you fix that problem when you import vehicles. But the next thing is the projection on the ground. And this was actually quite fascinating. Basically, you have proxies. and the proxy actually like reflects, not reflects, but it casts light onto the ground. And this here is one of those proxies. Normally you have like P or PP for a particle. Well, it's not a particle this time. This is a light. So you have LMV Hummer. And what this is doing is it allows you to take that proxy and project light onto the ground. And the way those are created is there is an XML file called light sources XML. And what this does is it allows you to take the name, for example, of a proxy. You know, you have a light field source, you define the proxy, and then basically you can define what type of light it is and how it's casted. So you have the diffuse color, which would change the color of the light. You have the intensity, which changes the opacity. You have the width, the length, and the height of the light. All of those things. And then specifically for like explosions or things where you'd want a light to go off for a specific amount of time, you have the destruction time and the destruction fade. So that makes it to where the light will stay on for like a specific amount of time, and then when it's done, this is the time that it takes for it to fade away. Because here's the cool thing. Like all of the proxies, the dazzles, and the meshes can be controlled with a visibility layer, just like any other object. Sort of like when I was talking about how you can apply an effect to a unit at a specific frame in an animation using a visibility layer, you can do that with these proxies. So, for example, if for some stupid reason you wanted to give a Marine the ability to turn on his flashlight or whatever, and you could do that by swapping animations, you could tie the visibility of these lights to those animations. So you could go into here and you could go to your graph editor thing, and you would be able to go to your proxy right here, and you would be able to add a visibility track to it. And as I've discussed before, 1 means it's on, 0 means it's off, and hypothetically, you can tie every part of these lights to animations and making them turn on and off at specific times, which is kind of cool. Like for example, I think the military buildings, they have these lights that will spin around in circles, and they will turn on whenever like the construction process is going on. I think that's for the aircraft pad. But yeah, that's actually how you do it. And the interesting thing here is I took a look at the ambulance in the game. And the way that it was able to achieve the effect of the lights spinning round and round and round, which, hold on, let me pull that up. The way it was able to achieve this effect was it's basically an animation. This proxy is tilted at a slight angle, so it's projecting its light onto the ground like this, which you can actually tell with the effect pivot point. This is the direction the light is facing, and what it's doing is this is just an animation where it's rotating. Like both of those are just rotating, and as the animation plays, it's casting that light in different directions, which is how it's able to achieve that effect. And once again, this is using LWO ambient light red, and this one's probably using blue or whatever. And that's basically what it's doing. It's just casting that light off of the proxy, and it's just moving it in circles because of that animation. Now, one more thing that I would like to mention is that there are actually different types of lights and projections that are in the game. For starters, Sometimes when you have like the mesh itself that is supposed to be representing the projection of the light, it might use a different texture for that projection. So for example, if we look at my tank here, I separated the model into something different right here. And if I well, actually, no, the program's being buggy. But the point is, like, whenever you go into this and you take a look at the properties of this texture, it's using a different texture to make this part of the model glow. So that's one thing that's kind of important to keep in mind with making lights. But then another thing is that if you look at something like the ambulance, you'll notice that it has these flickering lights. And it's like, well, how the flip does it do that? So these are like individual meshes that are surrounding the model. And the way it works is it has a custom material applied to it. So if I take this and I move it out here, this is what it looks like. And if I go ahead and look for this material, figure out what it is, it's using mesh additive effect. Well, mesh additive is what it's using. And basically, it's doing something very similar to what the other stuff has been doing, but it's basically flashing on and off. And it's not affected by the daylight cycle, as you can see. Um, and the distortion factor is 1, which means if I lowered that, it would become lighter. But then you can also tell that there's UV scroll rate, which is changed, and then there's also the color that is changed. And I think because the UV scroll rate has been altered, that's actually what controls this thing turning on and off. So like basically this thing can flicker on and off. And the way it's doing that is it's picking a different spot in the UV map, which you can actually control by clicking on this. At least that's what I speculate. That's what I think is happening. Um, but yeah, this is a different effect. This is a different thing. Lights can be altered and changed in different ways. And okay, one more tiny little thing that I would like to mention. Um, Something that you do want to do when you import your models and you export them is you want to make sure to update the Dazzles inside of the Alamo utilities. So the reason I say that is because whenever you export the Dazzle, if you look at it inside of the Alamo viewer, when you import and then export a vehicle with Dazzles that previously existed in the game, what's going to happen is there's going to be a bunch of bones that are defined, and you don't necessarily need those to exist. So, whenever you go through this, whenever you import a model with Dazzles, before you export it, I would recommend clicking on all of the Dazzles like this, and then you can go over to export transform and just uncheck that. Keep export geometry. You do want to keep this. But you uncheck export transform, click the buttons down here in order to update that information, and then save it, then export it. That way you don't have dazzles that are defined as bones. It's not particularly necessary. The dazzles will still work, but I do recommend doing this just for formatting and making everything look cleaner in your code. Otherwise, when you go to look at your bones, all of these are going to appear as bones inside of that table. But yeah, that's that. I think that's it.